Hey, what's going on everyone? Hope everyone's doing well. So yeah, as we know, Perfect Dark on the N64 is celebrating its 20th anniversary. And, once again, I was working at Electronics BC when this game came out. I mean, back then this was, this was my golden era, man. My absolute golden era of games. Everything was just getting bigger, better, more incredible, and we were playing games that were just blowing your mind for the first time. These games were just doing things that you just never saw in video games before, and Perfect Dark, just took that GoldenEye formula to the next level. It was absolutely phenomenal, and it is my favorite first-person shooter on the N64, and one of my favorite first-person shooters, ever. And I think a lot of people, can look back at this game, all the memories, all the cool stuff, like the laptop guns, like the multiplayer, like the far sights, the bots and stuff. And I was lucky enough to experience all this at the time and play the multiplayer, and just take in the single player and all that sci-fi epicness, and we could talk about the frame rate and stuff, back then, and we were aware of it, then, but it didn't stop Perfect Dark from being a absolutely phenomenal game, and it still does stuff today that many first-person shooters don't even do, or even care to attempt. So Perfect Dark was just on that next level, and I think it showed in the game. And I always used to joke how you can see smoke coming out to the N64, because as we know, that game pushed the N64 to the max. So there's been quite a lot of celebrations and stuff online, lots of YouTube videos, lots of articles, and the best article I've read so far is the one on Eurogamer, where they manage to get a lot of the old staff and get to you get to hear things, not just about Perfect Dark, but about Rare at that time. And I've studied all that, everything that was going on during that time, all the craziness, all the overconfidence, all the magic, everything. It was some crazy stuff. And in this article, there's some stuff that even I didn't know, and I don't think this might have been the first time we might have actually heard about a lot of this stuff. Some of it's quite sad, some of it's funny and enjoyable, but it still once again paints a picture of how crazy that era was. How magic got captured, but through a lot of sacrifice. And it's unfortunate, because we all talk about how Rare was so integral to the N64 and to Nintendo for their third-party Western arm. And I've been meaning to do videos about those studios that Nintendo, that you feel Nintendo should have kept and stuff. But I've also always kind of said as well that Rare as a studio, even back then in their heights, might not have been the best studio for Nintendo to buy outright and completely own. And this article highlights many reasons why. But in the article, there's one part that just that caught me the most. Funny enough, it's from David Doig, and I'll quote this because I got it on my phone now as I'm talking. And he said, looking back on it, I think it was an amazing place. The stuff Rare did, particularly the N64, kept Nintendo in business. It was a powerhouse. Without the Rare catalog, Nintendo might not be in business now. And he goes on to also say, also at Rare, we weren't competing with the rest of the world. We were competing with the other teams at Rare. That's stuff I knew about. It was a hotbed of creativity. Tim and Chris did a really good job of insulating the creativity and the production and development from the usual bullshit that is out there. But we kind of paid the price for that as well, I suppose. And that goes into the chaos and anarchy that the studio was going through. And Nintendo weren't stupid back then. I'm sure they caught wind of all this and knew about all this. And I can't imagine Nintendo wanting to be a part of that, which is leads to the future that we have now. But going back to the start of the article, where he says the stuff Rare did, particularly N64, kept Nintendo in business. That's it's a bold thing to say, and I thought it'd just make a good quick discussion point on how I feel about it, and maybe how you feel about it, especially if you were around at that time, or even looking back now, if you weren't around that time and seeing what happened during the N64, what happened afterwards, and where we are now. And of course, Nintendo aren't out of business, but we need to focus on the N64 here, because a lot of the time when we talk about the N64, you have to mention Rare's library. You really do. You have to mention Rare's library because Rare on the N64 were in some respects integral to that system's success, that system's history. Every time you talk about the N64, you're going to be talking about GoldenEye, you're going to be talking about Banjo, you're going to be talking about Perfect Dark, Diddy Kong Racing, Conker's Bad Fur Day, Banjo-Tooie, Mickey's Speedway, although a lot of people didn't play that, but you're going to be talking about all these Rare games that were just in some ways, many of them better than what Nintendo could offer in some similar genres. I would still say to this day that Diddy Kong Racing is a better kart racing game than Mario 64. Now there's two avenues. I think single player wise, Diddy Kong Racing is better than Mario Kart 64, but multiplayer wise, Mario Kart 64 is better than Diddy Kong Racing. But in the end, it doesn't matter. They're two great games, but it just showed how Rare could learn from Nintendo and build upon that. And you see the arguments between Mario 64 and Banjo-Kazooie all the time. It's just Rare at that time they were just on fire, absolute fire, and creating industry changing blockbuster games, real quality games that pushed the N64 to the max, pushed it harder than Nintendo pushed it. So Rare back then, they were a powerhouse. They were a big name, which is why we still sing them praises today. But if Rare weren't on the N64, would the N64 have been as successful? Arguably not. But would Nintendo have gone out of business? Absolutely not. It's I think it's a bit crazy to say something like that. I think we've seen a lot of times where Nintendo are considered to be down and out for the count. But at the end of the day, we still buy Nintendo hardware for Nintendo software. Now, even though Rare's games, they were a second party to Nintendo, they weren't Nintendo games, and we will still sing all the praises for Mario 64, for Ocarina of Time, for all these Nintendo games that in themselves changed the industry far more than anything Rare ever done. Ever. You can't, there's virtually no comparison, in my opinion. And, when we think about, what Nintendo done during the N64, like I said, they set the templates for most things. Now, of course, Rare was there for the first-person shooters and stuff, and that was the strong Western arm that Nintendo has always needed. And it's what we've always craved. We had it so good with the N64, Nintendo and Rare. We had it so good, and then after that, then we looked to others to fill in those gaps, whether it was Factor 5, Retro Studios, and they did. Fill in many gaps. I would put Metroid Prime as a game above anything Rare has ever done. Anything. Metroid Prime is better, far better than anything Rare has ever done, in my opinion, and that's from Retro Studios. So where Rare could be replaced, but at the end of the day, they captured an era where, like I said, it was that golden era of 3D where everything was just so new and magical and amazing, and Rare were there at the forefront with Nintendo creating these industry-changing games. That's hard to beat. That's hard to beat when you're there at the right time in history. It's really hard to beat. And we say to this day that it's never been the same. Whether the industry has never been the same, whether Nintendo platforms have never been the same, we still crave that era, and we don't necessarily crave Rare to come back now, because we know and see what has happened. You have Rare at Microsoft, who are a shadow of their former selves, unfortunately, and then we have Platonics, doing their stuff, and we saw what happened with Free Radical. And they started off creating some great stuff. That's all in this article as well. I really recommend reading this article. It's really good. But like I said, the magic had gone then, and it's sad. It's always sad to look back and see what happened. But at the same time, like I said, I was so glad that I was able to experience it all at that time. Some people will struggle to go back to these consoles and play these games. Like I said, Perfect Dark would be considered, if Perfect Dark released today. in a state that game released back then, God, you think we complain about day one patches and stuff like that today? But my God, that game wouldn't make it past quality control in no way, shape or form. You could just not release a game without performance issues today. It would get slammed and chucked in a bin, no matter how incredible it was. It just wouldn't fly. But I mean, to say that Nintendo would have gone out of business, I think is a bit of a stretch. But that I can also understand that mentality of being there at that time and feeling like you were leading this console above Nintendo themselves. I can understand it. When you do create stuff like Banjo-Kazooie, when you do create stuff like GoldenEye. When people talk about the N64 multiplayer, GoldenEye is probably there on the #1 spot. I can understand why you might have that mentality, but I suppose it's the same mentality of Sega, and Sega of America, and Japan. I don't know why these studios messed around so much, but I need to do a video on that. Actually, I'm not going to get into that, but I'll talk about that another time. But it was an incredible era. Rare were on fire, absolute fire, and it's arguable that no other third party or second party studio has reached those same heights as Rareware back then. They really were that great and that integral to the N64. Not integral to Nintendo not being out of business, not being able to stay in business. I mean, you're talking about the House of Mario here. It's a bit crazy to say that, but certainly integral to the N64 and its legacy. And it's a damn shame how it all ended. Damn shame it all ended. But I just want to do a quick video on this. Merry birthday, Perfect Dark. I absolutely love this game. Of course, I still got my original copy. And the gameplay you see now is my copy of it. And like I said, I got so many great memories. But I just wanted to keep this conversation to this little snippet of this article. How do you feel? Would Nintendo be out of business? If Rare weren't there on the N64 creating what they created, or would Nintendo have survived afterwards? Regardless, I mean, history has shown that they have. But if Rare weren't there on the N64, if you could wipe them from their history, and would Nintendo have survived on Mario and Zelda and what they'd done on the N64 alone without Rare? With someone else stepped in? I mean, at the end of the day, we still had games like Turok, which was still incredibly popular, and and all these other third-party games that came to the N64. But hey, it's food for thought, right? Like I said, I'm completely in the Nintendo would have been fine and gone on with it as they always have. But yeah, let me know your thoughts. Let me know if you played Perfect Dark back then, or if you played it now or haven't played it. Let me know your thoughts about it. Thanks for listening. Take care, everyone, and peace.